Today, we're gonna try to take the 4-point old school racing harness in this Cobra, get it up to date with a 5-point harness and install an anti-submarine belt. You know, this old school bucket seat isn't quite set up for it, so we're gonna see how it goes and see if we can at least do this in earnest as best we can with the way this seat is designed so that we can pass tech inspection and go on some sanctioned track days. Whether it be a 5-point harness with a single strap coming between the legs here, or a 6-point harness with 2 straps coming down. There's gonna be a couple of design issues and a couple of pieces of the frame to work around, some brake lines and things like that, to where we can actually get the harness to mount to a hard point. So follow along and check it out, and let's see what we do. The way the shoulder harnesses are set up in the Cobra, they are not directly in line with the seat. The odd thing about the Cobra itself is the way the floor is structured, because the engines that Shelby was putting in these cars was bigger than the inline 6 that the Bristol originally had, the AC Ace and the AC Bristol. Those cars, you probably sat on the center line, but because the engine and the transmission tunnel are widened in the Cobra, the seats actually sit sideways in the car. So technically speaking, the shoulder harnesses don't really line up with your shoulders anyway. So I think what I'm gonna need to do is split the difference and figure out if off center is okay. I think the idea is to really kind of center it between the upper seatbelt harnesses and where the driver's legs end up. There's kind of a triangulation here. That will get this thing centered across the driver's body. And I think that's the most important thing. That and getting it into a nice, secure piece of steel and not just this flat aluminum floor. So this ERA Cobra has a similar floor structure to the originals, and then it has these little frame outriggers here that extend over to the outer frame rail. This runs underneath the seat frame. You can see there's 2 outriggers there and a sheet of aluminum with some holes drilled in it. And those holes are set up to bolt the seat directly to the floor. There's no adjustment. So we want to try to get a bolt hole either into this outrigger here, which would give us a steel hard point, or try to get another bolt hole into the top of the frame. That way we know that that seatbelt is secure and that that harness would hold up in any kind of an accident. The other thing I'm dealing with is I'm dealing with a vintage racing seat that does not have a hole in the center of the seat for the anti-submarine belt to kind of snake up through. Normally on a race car, you'd have a hole in the center of the seat that brings this belt directly up, straight up from the floor. And we're kind of fudging this just a little bit to do some lighthearted track days. You know, this is not wheel-to-wheel racing. If we were doing that, we would definitely mount a racing seat in here and proceed with that. But with that in mind, I still want to get a nice centered bolt in the floor of this car for this anti-submarine belt to attach to. You know, we want to get it in a good spot. So if we do mount a racing seat, if we do want to like run some SCCA events, we can put a racing seat in and we're not drilling any more holes in the floor of this car. So I've made a mark between the rear 2 seat bolts and I made a mark between the front 2 seat bolts and gave myself a center line that runs down the exact center of the seat. Doing that gets us a point left or right of center to where I can drill into the frame and give ourselves a hard point to deal with. One of the things I'm dealing with is this outrigger situation here where the rivets go through the floor, and right where it meets the frame is where the rear brake line runs. So I don't want to interfere with the brake lines that are right there. If I drill right here, you can actually kind of see it. This is where that frame rail sits. And right where I want to drill is that brake line. So I can't drill there. So the rest of the seatbelt bolts are actually into hard steel mounts that are welded to the frame. So getting to one of these frame points is kind of paramount in this situation. One other thought we had was actually running a piece of steel bar between the 2 front seat bolts. The deal is with that, once again, we're only into kind of a lightly structural piece when really want to do is get into the frame of the vehicle itself. So that's our dead center spot. I really think that this bolt hole here in the outrigger is kind of the lesser of two evils. It's just so close to that brake line, it's making me nervous. So it's just off center. This thing wants to pull so far over to this side anyway. I feel like it's a reasonable compromise there. I'm gonna check and double check the measurement, and I think that's what we're gonna go with, because I think that hole will work really well for the opposite side as well. I'm gonna look at this bolt, and that is the one right next to the brake line. But I think if we're gentle, we can do this. Back down to working height. All right, so because I know I got that brake line there, I'm gonna go very slowly. And the first thing we're gonna do is get this rivet head off. And I don't even need to punch a hole because it already has a hole in the center. So go ahead and break this through the floor so that that rivet falls out underneath. And then we can see what we're working with before I start enlarging the hole. So now that we can feel the rivet has popped out, we're gonna like raise the vehicle up, get under it, make sure that we haven't caused any damage to the brake line. Okay, we can clearly see that we've come through the floor. Brake line's right here, so we're nice and clear of that. Now that I've got this hole kind of drilled out and I cleaned up the underside, I think I'm actually gonna go back above it and mark just 1/8 of an inch behind this hole, punch a new hole. That way I can get this dead center in this outrigger. I'm gonna go ahead and put a punch in this right behind this hole, because I know as we start to widen the hole, it's gonna intersect with the original hole. So I'm gonna use a hardened drill bit to get through the steel first. All right, so that got us right through the steel. Now we're gonna bump it out. All right, so we got about a 1/4 size hole now. We're gonna raise the car up, take a look at it underneath, and make sure we're still in a really good spot. You can see where the light's coming through the floor there, and we're dead in the center of that outrigger. We'll go ahead and take this hole to 3/8. That's our 3/8 there. Bolt goes through, which is nice. So our hole is looking pretty good here. We're gonna clean that up a little bit and work on it from underneath. So that fits nicely without getting in anywhere near the brake line, so that's a good spot. We're gonna run into the exact same issue here on this side, except there's no brake line. I think we're gonna go to this inside rivet again. While I'm under here and while I realize I've got plenty of clearance, I'm gonna go ahead and open up that hole to accept a 7/16 bolt. And also while I'm under here, I may go ahead and drill out this side, and that will actually dimple a hole. The bottom of these seats actually has an aluminum plate in it, and I need to clearance that for the top of this bolt hole because of the way these seats sit directly on the floor. Make sure our 7/16 bolt fits, and it does, so voila. We go one size up. So this takes us to 7/16. So we'll get a big washer on this guy here. So we'll make sure we fit nice and snug. There we go. You can see just how close it is to that exact center line of the seat. And we've got some adjustability here. We're gonna take this strap out a little bit so it's out from under the front bolster of the seat. We've now got a nice heavy duty attachment point for the anti-submarine belt. So we're gonna mimic this on the opposite side of the car as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and temporarily mount the seat and then take a pencil and mark the front of the seat and then drill a hole so that our big fat 7/16 bolt has a little relief to go into the bottom of the seat. All right, so we made a mark on the bottom of the seat. Where that hole is, I drew a little dot to give us a spot to clearance. So, all right, so now I'm gonna try to get this hole drilled. Was gonna use one of those Christmas tree bits, but I didn't have one that was shallow enough that wouldn't tear into this fiberglass. So I'm gonna use a hole saw. We got a nice machined hole there. I'll go back and vacuum all this aluminum shavings up because we don't want all that stuff shifting around inside the seat. So that's seat number one. We'll do seat number two and knock that one out too. So we're gonna get in on this side and do the exact same thing. And I'll mark the distance from the back of that outrigger that this rivet is and spike the point and drill it from the top. Got a nick made there, but I wanna look at this from the bottom of the vehicle as well. Make sure I'm right in the center because it might be better to drill from underneath. So on this side, I can actually get a little closer to center in the C-track. I measured 7 5/8 and it puts us over here. but basically, you know, I want to get a nice washer on that. So I'm gonna center this washer and basically put my hole through that. So I'm gonna use a punch to punch that out. Just make sure that the washer still lines up. Oh, it's perfect. All right, the next step with this is to put the seat in there, mount it, mark our hole in the bottom. So I'm going ahead and putting these seat bolts back in the seat. All right, so I don't have to tighten them up. Just gotta line them up so that I'm gonna take the Sharpie and draw this hole in the bottom of that seat that's exactly the spot where that bolt is gonna be recessed. Here's my little hole right here. This one's in a bit of a different spot. Go ahead and give it a little punch. And just go slow when you get to that last bit. And the little plug fell out in there, so I gotta fish that out somehow. Forgot I gotta do this on the other seat too. Super sharp, there you go. And don't forget that the insides of these edges are really freaking sharp, so you might go back and take a wire wheel and clean it up. The next step on this is to go ahead and start bolting in the anti-submarine belts themselves. So we'll get those set and bolted in before we put the seats in. So the one trick too is to make sure that on this seat belt that we've got the latch kind of going the right way when it comes up, and also so that we can get to the adjustment strap there before we put the seat on, because this is going to be kind of trapped by the front like bolster of the seat. Making sure we got the right hardware length as well, because we need to go through the seatbelt retainer here. Don't think we need a washer on the top, because this seatbelt tie-down plate kind of acts like its own washer. And we want to make sure the bolt has enough meat on it to go through the seatbelt retaining clip here, through the aluminum floor, and through the steel outrigger stanchion here that comes off the frame, and then also allow for a washer and a nylon lock nut. Generally, you know, you want to have a thread or two showing off that lock nut to make sure that that thing's not going to back out. All right, so we're dropping this through here. Got the washer in my other hand. Put this car up to where I can get to both sides simultaneously, which is, man, super helpful having the lift. Just gonna get the bolt started here. Yeah, there's plenty of meat on that. So now we'll go get the wrench and tighten this stuff down. So we got a nice big meaty washer on the bottom and a nylon lock nut so it does not vibrate loose. Oh yeah, and there's a couple threads showing there. We do have this adjustment strap loose here. I think what we need to do next is get the seat in and kind of test fit where the strap goes. So I'm gonna back it off a couple threads just so I have some looseness here to be able to adjust. Alrighty then. Let's see, that goes there. Bring this down, bring this through, latch and lock it so everything's held together. And then the adjustment is just down here on this strap. Basically pull this down to hold it tight. There we go. Let's back out. And we're gonna leave this just slightly loose so that we can possibly adjust it in the vehicle. Get this nice and straight. Okay, so now that we got this bolted in, that's pretty much it. Just get the seats bolted back into it and tighten down and we should be good to go. Gonna line them up with a screwdriver. Make sure we're in the right spot. Get them started by hand. We'll tighten them down. So this side is donezo. Our seatbelt bolt is there, giving us plenty of room next to that brake line, which you can kind of see. It turned out pretty well. Pretty pleased with the way it's all set up now. Now it's just a rinse and repeat for the opposite side. So this last seat was a total pain in the ass to get in there, but we did it, and now it looks pretty cool. Check it out. So it took a little longer than we expected just because of getting the seats in and out and test fitting and all that. But I think now that I have an anti-submarine belt on the passenger and the driver's side, I should be able to hit it track day, and hoping that whoever's doing tech that day says, oh yes, 5 point, good to go. If for some reason that this doesn't qualify us for you know, a track day, we can easily do a club day or a member day at one of the local tracks. We know that this seatbelt should come straight up through the center of the seat. We're not really willing to punch a hole in these seats, but if that's the case, mounting a vintage race seat might be the next step, and that'll give us perfect triangulation for that 5-point harness. Test this out real quick. Now that I got the seat bolted in, I mean, that comes up pretty centered right there, so that's what we're looking for. There's the lap belts. Shoulder. There we go. Make sure these are nice and loose because we want the lap belt held down at this point, and then we can just adjust it super tight. Adjust these guys. Oh man, it's like rocket tight. That's good. All that goes together really well. That feels really, really solid. So yeah, this works. Thanks for following along and checking it out with us. For more Cobra stuff, we'll be doing a little bit at a time, and this is just the start of it. Thanks for watching.